Yeah, it's still a little too close for comfort. Nuclear talks with Iran set to resume within minutes. This, as Secretary of State John Kerry, who was hoping to clinch a breakthrough, is expected in London tomorrow. Now, the United States and 5 other world powers working to overcome the last remaining hurdles and reach an historic deal with Iran amid doubts, serious doubts, about the concessions they may be making to the government in Tehran. Stephen Yates joins us, former Deputy Assistant to the Vice President for National Security Affairs. Stephen, always good to see you. The U.S. and other world powers are absolutely convinced that Iran is intent on developing nuclear bombs, yet Iran wants to ease the sanctions right now, while at the same time continuing to enrich uranium. Is that an unacceptable deal from our perspective?
From my perspective, it is. I think when it comes to nuclear counterproliferation, there's only one standard worth pursuing. That's complete, verifiable, irreversible dismantlement of all programs. Anything short of that, you allow them to be able to come back and do what they had been doing before, which is in violation of previous agreements. Iran, like North Korea before, was part of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. Once you have violated those terms, I don't think you should be able to go back and claim the rights of all of the other treaty members in good standing.
And in fact, what you're saying is exactly what Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is arguing. He is demanding a complete dismantling of Iran's nuclear program, and then maybe sanctions would be eased later, but only then. Do you think that would force Tehran to capitulate?
Well, I think that the only chance we have for a real strategic commitment from Iran is if they realize that they have to choose between continued regime survival and the prosperity of their economy, staying in power and governance, and giving up this ultimate weapon. This choice to pursue a nuclear weapon is a generation-long pursuit on their part. So it's not something that's going to be easily negotiated away. I think the worst possible thing is to imagine that a temporary partial deal is actually going to buy time to achieve denuclearization. What it will do is buy time for nuclearization.
By making concessions on sanctions instead of escalating them, is the United States and its allies giving up important leverage against Tehran?
I think for sure we're giving up leverage, but I think the part that's most disappointing to me is we seem to ignore the history we've had in negotiations with Iran and with North Korea and others, where we focus myopically on one path to a bomb, giving concessions along the way, celebrating as historic breakthroughs partial agreements, all the while the violator of international agreements continues to pursue the ultimate weapon by another path.
You know, Iran has, that we know of, roughly 19,000 centrifuges, and they're building more and more advanced ones. How can the United States be sure that Iran is not pursuing some other clandestine program elsewhere? For example, the Fordo complex was successfully hidden for the better part of 2 years. I mean, for all we know, there are others that we know nothing about.
Absolutely true. I mean, this is one of the most difficult things in dealing with hard targets like Iran and ultimate weapons like nuclear, that there is a great deal we can't possibly know, and that's why we have to be very cautious about what concessions we give and have a reasonable path to actually verify the agreement that we're making. And we should offer inducements, if at all, when we've verified progress in implementing a deal, not as part of an inducement to agree to a deal.
You and I have been talking about uranium enrichment. There's another program. Iran is also demanding to continue construction of this heavy water reactor near Iraq that could yield plutonium, which of course is an alternative bomb material. I mean, that's not acceptable either, is it?
No, it's not. And that's actually part of the bad history we've had in past negotiations on denuclearization, where we'll focus on plutonium and North Korea then went off on the uranium enrichment path and achieved weaponization. We could make a similar mistake in reverse, focusing only on uranium and then allowing the plutonium path to be open. Really, we have to find a way to have a complete, verifiable, irreversible dismantlement of all programs.
Right. Short
of that, Iran is a major threat to the region.
I got less than a minute. Most world powers believe that Iran could not realistically build a usable bomb in less than a year. You agree?
I say look at North Korea. That was a backward country, completely isolated, heavily sanctioned, and they've detonated multiple devices. Iran is more developed than North Korea. I think that we can't know on what timeline they'll develop this weapon.
Stephen Yates, as always, thank you, sir. Good to see you.
Thank you, Greg.
And that's going to do it for us. I'm Marthel Neville.